Wait for it, Zlatan. You will see that we are the champions of the UEFA Champions League next season. Mourinho gave Ibrahimovic a memorable quote for eternity. As we often say, the rest is history. Inter Milan was actually not highly rated that season. In terms of personnel, they did not renew with Emperor Adriano. Luis Figo retired at the age of 36. Crespo's contract expired and he moved to Genoa, while the close friends Ibrahimovic and Maxwell both signed with the Catalan giants. The $46 million that Barca placed on the negotiating table turned out to be a bargain for Inter to reinvest and acquire new players like the duo from Genoa, Diego Milito and Thiago Motta. The Nerazzurri were also fortunate as Real Madrid splurged in the transfer market, allowing Wesley Sneijder to join the team for just $15 million on the last day. The Dutch midfielder even quickly demonstrated his value in the Milan derby, despite not having participated in any of the team's training sessions before. On that day, Inter won convincingly with a score of 4-0. Inter tried to strengthen their squad in every position, but what made this team truly special was their ambition for trophies. At that time, Milito was already 30 years old and had never played for any major club like Inter, yet he was a prolific striker. Mourinho was right about Milito, and it's clear he was also the sharpest sword of the special one on the path to achieving the historic treble. Milito's hunger only represented a more passionate Inter team than ever under Mourinho's reign. Most players in that squad were no longer young and were gradually transitioning to the other side of their careers. Time was limited for them and could be seen as becoming their enemy. All of Inter at that time yearned for Champions League glory for many years, and besides them, Mourinho himself was fighting for it. In their first season under the guidance of the Special One, Inter won the Scudetto and also claimed the Italian Super Cup. But it was still considered a failed season for Mourinho personally, as he couldn't improve upon the disappointing performance of his predecessor Roberto Mancini in the UEFA Champions League. Therefore, you can understand that Inter's goal at that time was nothing but winning the title. Although with the quality of the squad at that time, few believed in their ambition. There had to be some foundation for Inter to believe they could achieve it. But Mourinho and his team that season had a slow start, as evidenced in the group stage when Inter struggled against teams like Barcelona, Dynamo Kiev, and Rubin Kazan. A problem arose in Mourinho's lineup after Sneijder joined. The Portuguese coach favored a 4-3-1-2 formation to maximize Wesley Sneijder's abilities. This tactic proved effective in domestic competitions where weaker opponents often adopted deep defensive lines, but it became a challenge on the European stage. Higher-rated teams typically used wingbacks to increase their attacking threat and stretch Inter's defensive line. However, Inter gradually adapted to this challenge. Mourinho's idea was to push Eto'o out wide to provide defensive support, and the issue was gradually resolved. Inter continued their dominance in Serie A with an 11-point lead over Roma in third place, but from then until April, Inter only won 1 in 14 matches and saw Claudio Ranieri's troops closing in. The clash with Barca occurred at a time when Inter's form wasn't particularly strong after the winter break, leading many to anticipate a downward spiral. Inter's performance in the group stage against Barca didn't offer much hope for this encounter, with a goalless draw followed by a crushing 0-2 defeat. The first leg took place at the Giuseppe Meazza Stadium, and at that time the media was focused on the sudden eruption of a volcano in Iceland, disrupting almost all air travel. Barcelona had to travel from Catalonia to Milan by bus over a distance of more than 1,000 kilometers and suffered a lot in terms of physical fitness. However, it must be emphasized that the first leg match against Barca was perhaps one of their best in history. The Spanish representatives took the lead through Pedro, but Sneijder's goal equalized the game before halftime. Then Maicon and Milito scored consecutively, bringing Inter a commanding advantage. In the second leg, Pep Guardiola complained a lot about the travel arrangements for the match. However, in typical Mourinho fashion, he responded with a witty remark in Pep's style, saying, "I'm sure the press will say it's my fault that I have a friend in the volcano who controls everything and I have to take responsibility for that." Of course, the story between Mourinho and Barca didn't end there. Mourinho's Inter embarked on a trip to Barca's Camp Nou with a 3-1 lead from the first leg. But as you know, Barcelona in the early 2010s was an unbeatable force under Pep Guardiola with tiki-taka and Lionel Messi. At that time, the away goals rule was still in effect, and the Catalans were brimming with confidence that they could defeat their opponents 2-1. Their dominance was echoed by nearly 100,000 spectators at Camp Nou. It could become a burial ground for any hope. Barcelona brought out their best players with only Iniesta absent due to injury. Ibrahimovic, Pedro, Messi, and Xavi, all the shining stars under Pep Guardiola, were present in full force. On the opposing side, Inter also fielded the likes of Wesley Sneijder, Eto'o, and Milito in attack, with Lucio and Walter Samuel in defense. Mourinho's team arrived at Camp Nou with the sole aim to ensure a 2-goal advantage and secure a spot in the final. He knew it was an extremely difficult task, and defeating Barca solely on the defensive front wasn't enough. He needed psychological warfare, something Mourinho had mastered. Some sarcastic remarks before kickoff powered out from the Portuguese coach, such as, "Reaching the final is our dream, but for the Barca players, it's an obsession. They are obsessed with reaching the final at the Bernabeu to amplify the pride of Catalonia, right on the home ground of their arch-rivals." This leads us to iconic moments, legendary memes on social media, what football fans still call the pinnacle of diving. In a clash, Thiago Motta swung his arm into Busquets' face, causing the Spanish midfielder to fall to the ground in apparent agony. Motta's arm swing wasn't strong enough to warrant Busquets' dramatic reaction, but his dive earned the referee a second yellow card, which meant a red card for Inter's midfield anchor. Mourinho's reaction to that incident was typical of his familiar, sarcastic style. He applauded and welcomed the chaos, receiving curses from all sides. This inadvertently spurred Inter's fighting spirit to new heights. They didn't falter. Instead, they rearranged their lineup to make the walls in front of Julio Cesar's goal more solid. Even when Piqué scored in the 84th minute, it seemed like the game was already over for the Catalan side. Indeed, a team once considered unbeatable in Europe at that time was defeated by another team that had just bounced back from a shaky start to the season, having been eliminated from the Champions League earlier. And it started with this image, Mourinho's iconic celebration. The special one ran along the field, raising his finger to the sky amidst the cheers from the Camp Nou stands. He was accustomed to being the villain, accustomed to the opponent's taunts. The first and only Barcelona player to approach him was Victor Valdés, the goalkeeper, initially trying to reason or offer some advice. Later on, Valdés seemed to lose his composure, even attempting to confront the opposing coach to quell the rising anger. Eventually, the sideline referee and some members of the leadership intervened to restrain Valde. Exactly. Because there's no reason to prevent someone from celebrating. For Mourinho, it was an unforgettable day, a day that couldn't be forgotten, and the happiest moment in his career. Inter endured incredibly tense moments, experiencing the sweetest defeat, and their players were true heroes. After all they had endured, they deserved to celebrate with all the overflowing emotions. At that time, for the Catalans, Jose Mourinho hadn't yet created the deep rivalry as he did later. To them, Jose was just a translator for Bobby Robson. Barcelona then chose Pep Guardiola as the successor rather than a coach who had won the Champions League and made a name for himself in the Premier League. Mourinho's clash with Barca continued with a connection named Zlatan Ibrahimovic. When Ibra wanted to leave Inter to seek glory at Camp Nou, Mourinho advised him earnestly. He hoped his protege would stay, because winning the Champions League with a giant like Barca was completely normal, but sticking with Mourinho, he would achieve something special. That clash continued at the San Siro on April 20th, 2010. Barcelona, deemed unbeatable, crashed into the defensive wall, even facing negativity from their opponents. Pep vowed to attack. "We will play a faster football, something they don't do here." Even when they arrived at Camp Nou, Jose's team immediately received a warm welcome from the Catalans. Mourinho recounted that the police in the city even raided the hotel and intended to arrest Samuel Eto'o on tax evasion charges. And finally, there was Motta's controversial red card in this match, the jeers, and a hostile atmosphere created by the fans throughout the 90 minutes. In a showdown where, as Mourinho shared, his team didn't just park the bus, they even brought an A340 aircraft with wide wings to shield Caesar's goal, Marco Materazzi remarked, "Barca was almost unbeatable, but instead of being defeated by the opponent, we together toppled the giant." In contrast, Piqué felt shocked because the first time Mourinho came as a guest at Camp Nou, they lost 0-5. For them, what had a more significant impact wasn't being eliminated from the Champions League or being taunted by Mourinho's celebratory lap around the field. The worst thing was that defeat was the catalyst for Pep to leave Barca. Finally, Mourinho came clean about that lap around Camp Nou. "I was just celebrating with the fans, those who traveled thousands of kilometers to support the team. What reason do they have to ban me?" Throughout his career, Mourinho has often run along the sidelines to celebrate. On the day Porto won the Champions League, he ran as if there were no tomorrow. Or more recently, Mourinho also ran across the Olimpico Stadium after a thrilling victory against Sassuolo. But no run made the special one feel as excited, proud, and memorable as what happened at Camp Nou. After all that had happened, Mourinho's emotions truly overflowed on the day his Inter defeated the almost unbeatable team at that time.